Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Alfonso Speaks. Can you hear me? There we go. Welcome back to Alfonso Speaks, and welcome back to Independent Voter Reacts. So, we had a pretty eventful day today in the presidential race between Kamala Harris and new Vice President nominee, brain fart, Tim Walz, and former President Trump and his vice presidential nominee, J.D. Vance. And today, August 7th, 2024, both campaigns went to the same city and hosted rallies. And as you can see, they're going to have a completely different look and feel to them. And just based off of where J.D. Vance is hosting his rally, I can tell the kind of audience he's trying to appeal to, which is like the working man, and you'll see what I mean when I show it to you. But this is J.D. Vance's, I believe, his first public rally, remarks, whatever, since Tim Walz was chosen as the vice presidential nominee for the Democratic Party ticket. So here we are. As you can see, two different rallies here. On the bottom right, you see the Harris-Walz rally, and the top left, the Trump-Vance rally. Now, here's the thing. Again, I'm not here to tell you who to vote for. I'm not here to sway your opinion one way or another. We're just here to watch the show. I'd say don't base your opinion on how well each campaign is doing based on the crowd size. I believe that J.D. Vance's choice to do his rally here in this kind of environment, I feel like it was strategic, because we've already seen rallies that he's done that have drawn crowds similar to the one you see for Harris and Walz. Now, did he execute those rallies? No, he honestly did a very poor job. Even Fox News cut away from it in the middle of that rally, which they never do if it's going well. But that's what they did do. But we got a long way to November. J.D. Vance can improve. J.D. Vance could sway a lot of voters if he finds a way to, bring that inner charismatic character out of himself. So far, he has left people feeling a bit uninspired, and that doesn't necessarily mean that his policies are bad or won't work or whatever the case may be, but it does mean that when you look at the scope of who's going to turn out and vote, they're looking at stuff like this and saying to themselves, okay, is he tugging at the heartstrings? And that's why, yesterday I put out the video where Tim Walz was introduced as the vice presidential nominee for the Democratic Party. And honestly, he definitely gained that campaign a lot of voters last night. Like it or not, my Trump supporters that are on this channel, like it or not. Tim Walz, say what you want about him, that man made one heck of a speech last night. So if the Trump campaign is going to have any type of chance, J.D. Vance is going to have to step up his game big time. So let's see how he did in today's rally, as they both hit the same city on the same day around the same time. Like, how crazy is that? Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Wisconsin is a state that I love very much, as my Darrell Brooks trial followers know very much about me. This is one of my favorite states. I love the people of Wisconsin. They might vote a certain way. Maybe we don't agree. Maybe we do agree. But every time I've gone there, they've treated me with the utmost kindness and respect. And I love Wisconsin people, man. I love that state. So let's check it out. Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Be here in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. I believe.
Sorry, guys. The only reason I skipped ahead is because I heard music and I'm not getting copywritten. I'm not trying to cut out anything from his speech. Just got to watch for things like that. Trying to stay monetized over here.
We're going to get some ice cream afterwards, and I think there's already some debate about which place we should go to. So hopefully we're not going to cause any Eau Claire rivalries here. But I'm excited about.
Eau Claire. Sorry, it's not Eau Claire. Eau Claire. I'll make sure I pronounce it correctly for the rest of the video. Eau Claire.
About it. And we've had a good day. We actually just saw the vice president's plane on the tarmac. We landed about the same time that she did. And I went over there because I thought it might be nice to check out this plane that's going to be mine in a few months if we all take care of business. And I think we will. But Mostly, actually, I wanted to go and say hello to the journalists who are traveling along with the vice president because I figured they must be lonely because Kamala Harris doesn't take any questions. And I want to just point this out before we let the media ask me some questions, that I think it's really disgraceful, both for Kamala Harris, but also for a lot of the American media that participates in this stuff, to have a person who has been the presumptive nominee of the Democrat Party for 17 days and refuses to take a single question from the American media. Now, it's well known, of course, that President Trump and I will go anywhere, we'll answer any question because we respect the American people enough to actually ask them for their vote rather than sit in front of a teleprompter, read scripted lines, and run away from every reporter and every actual citizen who's going to decide this election. I think it's a scandal, and I think the vice president should be ashamed of herself. So hopefully our reporters out there in the audience will start doing their job a little bit and going and demanding that Kamala Harris actually answer to the American people. And what should she answer for? And I think it's an important thing to point out here before I kick it over to you guys for some questions. Well, one thing she should answer for, we're in a great American manufacturing facility here, and I appreciate y'all showing up and standing behind me. But one thing we know is that you cannot manufacture in this country unless you have access to low-cost power. And we happen to be sitting on the Saudi Arabia of natural gas in this country. We happen to have unlimited oil and gas resources right here in the United States of America, and yet Kamala Harris would rather get energy from tin-pot dictators in Iran and Russia than from American citizens and American workers. And not only is that driving up the cost of power for hardworking American families, it's also making it harder and harder to manufacture right here in the United States of America. And I'm one of these guys who believes that it's important that we make more things right here in the USA. We ought to make more of our own pharmaceuticals. We ought to make more of our own manufactured goods. We ought to make more of our own food. We have to be self-sufficient as a people. And if we're not self-sufficient, then it's going to allow the communist Chinese to run all over us. And that's...
So he's saying some things that I do agree with here. Now, I'm not sure about the attacks on Kamala. I don't know the legitimacy of that, but I do know that I think it is beneficial to America to have a lot of our items that we use every day, a lot of our resources manufactured here in America. I mean, there shouldn't be any reason why, if we have it here, that we should be going overseas to get it, except if the drilling that you're talking about has to do with drilling on sacred grounds. Now, that's a complicated issue. Because, in my opinion, Native Americans have suffered enough throughout the history of this country. And that would be the final nail in the coffin for them, drilling into land that's sacred to them. Don't forget, they were here first. We've already taken over most of their land. But I find it interesting, the conversation around that, because would drilling in those areas vastly improve the lives of Americans all over? Yes. However, there's a moral and ethical issue there as well that has to be considered, where this is land that is sacred and important to these Native American tribes, and we can't just start drilling all over their property. Now, I'm not sure what it is in Wisconsin necessarily. I just know, like, in the Dakotas and some areas of the northwest of the United States, we have some pipelines that could be drilled in order to get oil, which would vastly reduce the prices when we talk about gas and things that use gasoline. But this is not a black and white issue. And that's one thing that I really hope that people take as an understanding of what's going on in these countries. I hope these videos paint that picture for you all, that a lot of these topics are not black and white. You're told that they're black and white. You're told that in a lot of these cases it's right and then it's wrong. That's not necessarily the case. There's a lot of layers to a lot of these issues that all need to be considered. Because there's a reason why there's such a divide when it comes to a lot of these topics, and it's because of things like this. Like, how do you justify taking more land from Native Americans in order to drill for oil just to save ourselves some bucks You know, is that morally acceptable? Is that ethical? You know, a lot of voters have different opinions on it, and that's where the divide comes. So again, I'm listening for policy. There's a lot of hoopla in a lot of these rallies, right? You got one politician attacking the other. It happens every single time. Like, we know it's coming. But at the end of the day, I'm listening for the policies. I'm not listening for the attacks on the other side. Tell me what you're going to do, not what the other side is going to do. What are you going to do?
That's exactly what they've been doing under the Harris administration. The other thing that Kamala Harris ought to answer for is this terrible crisis at the American southern border. She has been the border czar for 3.5 years, and Americans have suffered because of it. I know this community's been affected by it. I know I've seen the consequences of it personally, but the fentanyl that the Mexican drug cartels are bringing into our country, it is killing Americans by the bushels, and it is unnecessary. It is happening because of failed public policy. I talked to somebody just yesterday, actually, two kids, a 19-year-old boy and a 15-year-old girl, and their mom and dad had died of a fentanyl overdose just 5 years prior when they were 10 and 14 years old. These two kids were orphaned.
Now we're getting into the real crux of the border issue. Give me 1 second. Okay, we're back. Sometimes fatherly duties call. Let's do this.
And they're incredible kids. And I told them I was rooting for them. And I just...
Let's back up just a little bit.
14-year-old unnecessary. It is happening because of failed public policy. I talked to somebody just yesterday, actually, two kids, a 19-year-old boy and a 15-year-old girl. And their mom and dad had died of a fentanyl overdose just 5 years prior when they were 10 and 14 years old. These two kids were orphaned. And they're incredible kids. And I told them I was rooting for them. And I can't believe that our leadership has let what has happened to these children happen. It's not necessary. There's no American that wants the Mexican drug cartels to take advantage of our country and make billions of dollars selling drugs into our communities. And these kids suffered because of it. You have a little girl who's bounced around 4 foster homes in just the past 4 years because of the poison that took her parents from her. And you ask yourselves, why are we doing this? Why are we letting this stuff come into our country? I know very personally the pain of addiction. Some of you saw my RNC remarks, but my mom struggled with addiction for pretty much my entire life. And she's been clean and sober for nearly 10 years now, and that's an incredible blessing for my family, an incredible blessing for my kids to be able to get to know their grandmother. But I really believe that if the poison that Kamala Harris is letting come across the border in 2024 was coming across the border 15 years ago or 12 years ago, I would have never got that second chance with my mom. And we would have never had the opportunity to see her build a wonderful relationship with her 3 grandchildren. And if this campaign of Donald Trump's and mine is about anything, it's about preserving the American dream, and the American dream is sometimes a thing of second chances.
See, this is what we need more of from J.D. Vance. Now, since he was named vice president and since Kamala was named the Democratic nominee, you've seen J.D. Vance and Donald Trump resort to questioning her ethnicity and throwing backhanded, childish insults. Like, we don't need that. That's not what you're going to build a campaign off of. Now, I don't know if that appeals to their voters. I don't know if that appeals to the hardcore MAGA folk, but I know for an independent voter like myself, that doesn't work. What works is you explaining how you relate to me, the common man, and what you're going to do to improve the state of affairs in this nation. So this is the type of stuff I like to hear. J.D. Vance is off to a pretty good start here in his appearance.
We want moms and dads to recover from addiction and get another chance with their kids. We want kids who come from a poor family to be able to stand here and run for vice president of the United States because it's the greatest country in the world, and we are proud of it, and it provides incredible bounty and incredible opportunity to our people.
That is one thing I love about America. You know, the wife has been watching a lot of like Game of Thrones and House of Dragons lately, and I'm like, man, the one thing I just cannot understand this is this whole royal family thing. Like, you're born into this family, and all of a sudden you're just better than everybody else. It just doesn't click with me. It doesn't make sense. The one thing I do like about America is that no matter where you are, no matter where you're born, no matter who you are, you have a shot. You have a puncher's chance at least. Now, are there some groups of people that are disenfranchised and there's more hurdles put in their way? Absolutely, yes. But I really believe that even if a barrier is not knocked down, one of us can do it ourselves. I mean, hey, I'm a black guy, right? There's going to be some hurdles put in front of me that aren't put in front of other people. However, I don't feel like I am comfortable using that as an excuse to not chase the things that I want to chase in life. I'm going to go after every single thing that I want because I was born in America, and America has provided those opportunities for me. Even if I have to do twice the amount of work to get half of what somebody else has, I still have the freedom to do that work. I still have a puncher's chance. And that is one thing I like about America. I really, really love that about America. It does seem that you do have a chance. You do have an opportunity to make something of yourself, no matter who you are and where you come from. It's all about the choices that you make ultimately.
We want kids who grow up in low-income families to be able to walk outside and walk down the street without being afraid of a violent crime, because violent crime has skyrocketed under the Harris administration.
Okay, so this right here, I'm sorry I keep pausing, guys, but this is where some Republicans think they're slick. They want to talk about crime, going on in the country, which is a very valid thing. Like, we want to create as safe of a society as we possibly can. But why is it when the topic of gun control comes up, now all of a sudden it's a different conversation? When, statistically speaking, presently in 2024, the leading cause of death for children in America is assault rifles. Look it up. So why are we ignoring that, but then trying to build a campaign on being tough on crime? Last time I checked, shooting up a school full of children is a crime. Why are we not being tough on that one? And again, that's where I kind of lean towards Governor Tim Walz and what he did in Minnesota with the universal background checks for gun owners, an assault rifles ban. Like, why do we need assault rifles? I don't understand. I think the thing I've heard most people say when it comes to assault rifles is we want to be able to defend ourselves in case our government gets out of line. I can understand that. I can definitely understand that. So again, it's one of those issues where I am very much on one side of the fence for it, but I still understand it's not a black and white issue. So, don't take this as, oh, I'm against lawful gun owners who are responsible. No, I am very much for you. I don't feel as strongly about the assault rifles ban as I do the universal background checks. I don't understand why anybody's against a universal background check. If your record is clean, if you don't have any history of severe mental illness, and you can be a responsible gun owner, you're going to pass your background check. And you're going to get a gun. Any gun you want. Why is it so bad of a thing to want to keep dangerous weapons away from people who should not have them because they can't handle them? Like, that's the discussion. Like, I really need somebody to explain to me why that would be an issue. Because I really just don't get it. Maybe y'all can help me out.
We want police officers to be able to do their job and maybe receive a thank you from their federal government, and not a federal government that makes their job more and more difficult. And in all these areas, we have a country that's going in the wrong direction thanks to Kamala Harris. And I think that it's important to say we could be doing so much better. And not just that we could be doing so much better, we were doing so much better when Donald J. Trump was president of the United States.
And again, let me stop you right there, JD Vance. Let me stop you right there. Because once again, you think you're slick. You cannot, again, you can't build a campaign on backing the police when on January 6th, those rioters stormed the Capitol and took the lives of at least 2 officers, injuring even more than that. And Trump says that he'll pardon those people. If you look at his interview with the National Association of Black Journalists, they challenged him on this. They said, President Trump, do you still think that those people who stormed the Capitol on January 6th should be pardoned? You said that you would pardon them. And Donald Trump said, yes. And the reporter said, but they killed 2 police officers that day, assaulted many others that day. These people in uniform that you're claiming to be fighting for, you're now fighting to defend people who took 2 from their ranks? How does that make any sense? So again, you can't build a campaign off of this. If you're Trump and Vance, you can't build a campaign off of wanting to protect those who are supposed to protect and serve. You can't do that. That's not a strong pillar for you, because your track record, your actions are speaking differently.
States. We had somebody who was fighting for American manufacturing, American workers, and fighting for their jobs. We had somebody who was empowering our police and making it easier for them to do their jobs. We had somebody who was stopping the flow of fentanyl and stopping the Mexican drug cartels from taking advantage of our country. And we had somebody who was pursuing the kind of economic policies where you could build a life in your home without having groceries become unaffordable, without having housing become unaffordable. The most consistent complaint that I hear from people all across the country, and I've been to more than a dozen states, I think, since Donald Trump tapped me. The most consistent complaint that I hear is that it is harder and harder for normal people to get by. And I happen to think that if you work hard and play by the rules in this country, you ought to be entitled to a good life in the country that your grandparents built. It's a very simple goal, and it's something that we can get for everybody. Now, is that possible? Thanks to Kamala Harris, grocery prices are up 30% since she took office. Gas prices are up 50% since she took office. Rent is over 40% since she took office. Every single thing that Americans need to buy in order to live a halfway decent life has become more expensive because of Kamala Harris's economic policies. And instead of saying, I'm sorry, instead of saying, maybe...
Was it because of Kamala's or Biden's? Like that's a pretty it's a pretty legitimate question to ask, because now we're getting into, oh, whose fault is it? Whose fault is this? Whose fault is that? But Kamala was vice president. Last time I checked, Joe Biden was the one that was in charge of the economy, not Kamala Harris. So, who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Again, in the comment section, you guys let me know if I'm saying anything that's a little bit off. Feel free to correct me. No issue with that whatsoever. But I don't see how people say all the time, oh, the vice president doesn't even do anything. Okay, so how can you sit here and blame Vice President Harris for what was happening in Joe Biden's America? Because here's the thing, is JD Vance going to be willing to take any of the fall for the things that go wrong under Trump's campaign? Because some things will go wrong. Like no presidency is perfect. So if Donald Trump wins in November and some things start going catastrophically wrong, is JD Vance going to be willing to bite the bullet on that one and say, like, oh yeah, I'm equally as responsible as Donald Trump in this situation? I doubt that he'll be able to do that. I doubt that he'll want to do that.
We should go in a different direction. She's running from the media, refusing to answer tough questions, and hoping that a basement campaign is going to earn her a promotion. And I think we ought to say to Kamala Harris, you are fired. Your policies didn't work, your agenda doesn't work, and it's not what the American people want. So let me just recap it here, and then I will turn it over to the media. On day one, Kamala Harris suspended deportations. On day one, Kamala Harris stopped deportations for the American people. On day one, Kamala Harris refused to continue construction of the Trump border wall. On day one, Kamala Harris basically refused to push back against the drug cartels in this country.
Okay, I'm going to stop him there again. He mentioned the border wall. Trump said that that would be done within the first 4 years. Trump said that. Trump said that the wall would be finished during his presidency. Therefore, it's his policy. It was not the responsibility of Kamala Harris to continue Donald Trump's border wall. It was Donald Trump's responsibility to finish his border wall before the end of his first term. He didn't do so. Can't be slick like that. Can't blame Harris for that one. But he's right about everything else. The border has been a complete disaster under Kamala Harris. But I'd be interested, again, this is where I want to hear like the policy, like Kamala, what are you going to do to fix the border issue? Because fentanyl is a huge issue. A friend of mine recently lost her mother just a couple of months ago to a fentanyl overdose. So, you know, I definitely understand the impact of, you know, what the border breachings mean to this nation. But let's not be slick and keep passing blame and doing all this. Like, we're not going to sit here and ignore the fact that could Kamala and Joe Biden have done a better job? Yes. But did Donald Trump also interject in some of the policy that was attempted to be passed in order to stop a lot of the border issues from being fixed under the Joe Biden and Kamala Harris presidency and vice presidency? Yes, he did. He influenced a lot of the Republican voters in the House to vote against the bill that the Biden administration was introducing in order to fix the border situation. He did that. And he did that because he wanted something to build his campaign on. He needed a strong point to build his campaign on. And if that border issue would have got fixed, I mean, you really wouldn't have anybody complaining about another 4 years of Joe Biden. So we have to remember, the reason I'm an independent voter is because I don't worship any of these parties or any of these politicians. I see the flaws in all of them. I see how they either lie straight up or they tell half-truths. And it's important for all of us to see through it. It's important for all of us to see through that stuff. To stop looking blindly in support of one candidate and one party and understand both parties have flaws. Both parties lie. Both parties do things for their own gain. And both parties need to be held accountable for the things that they're doing, the lies that they're telling, and the empty promises that they're making.
And on day one, Kamala Harris said that she was going to decriminalize illegal aliens, and she did all of those things. Now, the American people have suffered the consequences because of it. On day one, Kamala Harris became the border czar, and ever since then, we've had a wide open southern border. Now, it's not just what she's done on day one, it's what she's done ever since then. She cast the deciding vote for the so-called Inflation Reduction Act that sent a lot of our resources to China and sent interest rates through the roof. She cast the deciding vote for the very policies that made groceries and gas and housing less affordable for American citizens. And I think it's very simple. I think that we can do better. I know that we can do better. We were doing better when Donald J. Trump was president. So thank you all for being here. Thanks for standing in support of our president. And to all the American people out there who are listening to these remarks or will hear them on TV just a little bit later, my very simple request is to think about people who are suffering in this country. Think about kids who lost a parent to an opioid overdose. Think about families like mine who can't afford groceries when they go up by 30%.
I don't think he meant to say that like that. At least I would hope not. Because in his position, he makes plenty of money. It doesn't matter how much groceries go up, he's going to be able to afford it. So I hope he's not saying families like mine that can't afford. I hope he's saying families, like I have a family just like you guys, and I understand how it would feel if you guys, you know, if I couldn't afford groceries because of the price hike. Like, let's. I'm hoping that's what he meant to say, but who knows? Because he said a lot of crazy stuff over the years, and since he took over as the Republican nominee for vice president, so you really never know. Sometimes you have to take their words at face value, but I also know that because he quoted it like that, there's going to be a lot of media outlets that take that and spin it into what they want it to mean. I want to know what he actually meant by that.
Think about families that are struggling because the mom and the dad can't get a good job because Kamala Harris would rather build the Chinese middle class than the American middle class. Those people could be doing so much better, and they will, so long as Donald Trump becomes president. My final comment I'll say is, it says on our national currency, "In God we trust." That is the motto of the United States of America. I believe that God calls us to hope and not to despair. And I really do hope for this country and believe that this country's best days are ahead of it. But the most important thing that we can do to give people all across this country hope is to get them a government that actually works for American citizens, and that's by electing Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. Thank you all, and God bless you. Appreciate it. And what I'd like to do here, is start with the local reporters, and then if we have questions from national reporters afterwards, then I'll call on you too. So if you're a local news outlet, if you throw your hand in the air, and I'll try to call on you. Sir, right there.
Hi, Daniel Gomez, WEAU 13 News here in Eau Claire. So, we just talked about the border and everything, and talked about addiction. You know, here in Eau Claire, earlier, like 5 months ago, we lost 2 hospitals, including an addiction resource center.
Great question.
As well. And as you know, Eau Claire County voted blue in the 2020 election, voting for Biden. So what can you tell Wisconsinites here in Eau Claire County in western Wisconsin who are battling addiction, who are battling these sort of things with such limited resources? What can you tell them to help us, see your way and see that you guys are the rightful choice here, even just without even mentioning the border, because we're far away from the Mexican border, but what can you do for Wisconsinites up here in the upper Northwest?
So we are far away from the Mexican border, of course, but we're not far away from the fentanyl that Mexican drug cartels bring into communities like Eau Claire. And that's why I talk about it. Every state is now a border state because every state is affected by the problems. But particularly on this question about hospitals and how do we actually reinvigorate hospitals in some of our small towns and more rural areas in our country, I think there are 2 answers to this question. One goes directly to the immigration problem and one doesn't. Look, first of all, we need to actually invest in our hospital system. We've seen since Obamacare was passed, we've seen a lot of rural hospitals in small towns close down. You cannot have a good healthcare system. You're never going to help people beat addiction if they've got to drive 90 minutes to the closest hospital. So we've got to preserve the rural healthcare infrastructure that exists in this country. And this is where the illegal immigration issue bears on it directly, because we know that Kamala Harris wants to give healthcare benefits, sometimes Medicaid, sometimes Medicare, to illegal aliens. We also know that when illegal aliens come in, they have to be housed in the jails sometimes, or they have to be housed somewhere else if they're not committing crimes. That costs local taxpayer money. We know they have to be fed. That costs local taxpayer monies. We know that they have to be provided shelter, right? That costs money. And you combine all those things, those are tax dollars that are not going to build out our rural hospital infrastructure and support our hospitals. They're going to people who shouldn't be here. Maybe they're good people, but they shouldn't be here, and we've got to put the interests of our citizens first. That starts with prioritizing things like hospitals, medical services, food and shelter, that stuff. I want us to be a generous country. And I know Donald Trump wants us to be a generous country, but that generosity starts with investing in American citizens and people who have the right to be here. Sir.
Okay, so this is so far J.D. Vance's best appearance yet, I think. Obviously I've called him out on some different stuff throughout his speech here, but I think so far he's done well of presenting himself and presenting the things that he wanted to say. So that was a good answer to that first question. Let's see what the next one is.
Sure.
I don't know if you saw, but there's a poll from Marquette University that came out earlier today. It shows a virtual tie between former President Trump and Vice President Harris. There's an old saying in politics that what can swing undecided voters in a place like Wisconsin is whether you seem like somebody they would like to have a beer with.
Yeah.
Why would people in Wisconsin want to have a beer with you?
Well, I guess they'd want to have a beer with me because I actually do like to drink beer, and I probably like to drink beer a little bit too much, but that's okay. I'm sure the media won't give me too much crap over that. But look, I mean, the reason I'm doing this, and the reason I think Donald Trump is doing this, and I think the media often slanders him, but I've never met a guy who likes normal people more than Donald Trump. I've never met a guy who, when he's got a big decision to make, He will solicit feedback from every single person all over the country. It's funny, when he was actually thinking about who was going to be his vice presidential running mate, I met with him actually the morning of the attempted assassination. It was Saturday morning. And he said, JD, everybody's asking me what I am going to do for VP, and I'm asking everybody. He said, in fact, this morning, I talked to the gardener at Mar-a-Lago. And I said, well, sir, what did the Mar-a-Lago gardener say? Right? This bears directly on my life. I'm very curious here. And look, I'm very much the same way. I like the people of this country. I like people who work hard and play by the rules. I like people who just want to take their kids to a ball game or invest in their community or spend a little time watching TV and making the things that actually make this country work. They do it, and they do it right here in this factory, and the people behind me do it every single day. And I think that to lead this country, you should feel some gratitude for it, and you should feel some admiration for the people who actually make the country run. And I will say sometimes I hear Kamala Harris, and she talks about the history of this country, and she likes to put it down a little bit. I don't know that she actually admires the people who work in this factory. I hope that she does, but I don't really see that gratitude. I don't really hear that gratitude when she speaks.
Okay, got to call you out again. You're talking about when she talks about the history of this country. Kamala Harris, a colored woman, talking about the history of this country. She has every right to not feel so great about the history of this country, seeing as though her ancestors were denied being able to use certain bathrooms or drink out of certain water fountains or eat at certain restaurants, or were sprayed with water hoses, or were lynched, beaten, attacked by dogs. Like, let's stop with this whole rhetoric that, oh, you need to be appreciative of this country. My grandmother, who is still alive, was on freedom marches. My grandmother, who's still alive, experienced extreme racism. Like, we're not that far away. This isn't prehistoric times that we're talking about when we talk about Jim Crow. We're talking about things that happened less than like 2 generations ago. That's not that many generations. So when she talks about the history of this country and doesn't talk about it favorably, she has every right to do so. I have every right to do so. But I also like to talk about the future of this country and what I think it can be. And I'm optimistic for it. If we continue to try to, eliminate this divide that we all have as a nation. And that doesn't come from not talking about the past. That's where y'all got it messed up. It doesn't come from not talking about the past. It comes from understanding the past, having real discussions about the past. Because if you don't learn from your history, you're doomed to repeat it.
I certainly do. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I'd make a good vice president, is because I actually care about the people standing behind me. And I think they feel like I care for them. And I think they care for me too. Are we, remember, start local, ma'am, in the red?
Governor Walz has said that he cannot wait to debate you. Your reaction to that, and is there one issue that you would really like to debate him on?
Minneapolis here. We're trying to focus on Wisconsin, but I'm sure your reach, I guess, spreads across the border, so we'll answer the question. Look, I think I want to debate Governor Walz because nothing to do with Governor Walz, but because the American people deserve to see the people who want to be their vice president stand before them and try to persuade them. And it's one of the things that's really frustrated me about Kamala's campaign is that she seems totally uninterested in actually talking to American voters and persuading them.
You think you're slick again, JD Vance. Your presidential candidate is the one that has been literally running from a debate with Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris has been basically begging Donald Trump for a debate at this point. So you can't say what you're saying and try to paint it like that when Donald Trump has been the one trying to avoid having a direct one-on-one debate with Kamala Harris. Now, I'm glad that you, Mr. Vance, are willing to have a debate with Governor Walz, not Waltz. But your presidential running mate doesn't seem to be super eager to do the same thing. So when, again, you make statements like this, like, understand, he knows what audience he's talking to. And he knows how they're going to interpret what he's saying. But independent voters like myself are going to see right through a statement like that. And I know it sounds like I'm being hard on J.D. Vance, but don't think I'm going to let Kamala and Governor Walz get off easy either. I'm not. This is not a left-wing channel or anything. It says independent voter reacts for a reason. Just got to keep giving that disclaimer, because some of the stuff I'm going to say is going to make you very, very upset if you like one of the candidates a lot. And all I really have to say about that is get over it. Or go watch CNN, or go watch Fox News. If you want to hear something that makes you feel good and makes you feel comfortable, go watch that. If you want to actually find middle ground and get to what the truth of these matters actually are, then you're in the right place, because that's what we're going to find together.
If there's a single issue around which I think Governor Walz has to answer when it comes to his record, this is a guy who says that he stands for public safety, but actively encouraged the rioters who burned down Minneapolis. And I think that if you want to say you stand for...
Do I need to say anything else here? He's attacking Governor Walz for what happened in Minneapolis. But we all know what happened on January 6th. And we all know Trump wasn't exactly in a rush to stop that from happening. So let's be fair.
Public safety, you cannot look the American people in the eye and say, well, I welcome the people who caused $13 billion of damage to Minneapolis because I encouraged them to burn my city to the ground rather than exercise some basic self-control and rather encourage law enforcement to do what they can do and keep us all safe. I'm scandalized by this guy pretending that he stands for working people. Working people need to live in communities with public safety. Working people need to be able to build a business and know that some hoodlum isn't going to come along and burn it to the ground because of a political issue. Working people need the police to be supported in their communities, and Governor Walz has been a total failure on all those things.
I am local.
Great, thank you.
Do you believe elections in Wisconsin are conducted fairly and securely? Obviously, your running mate had some issues with that in the last election.
Well, one of the things that Wisconsin did very poorly in the 2020 election is that it actually allowed a lot of big tech billionaires to spend a lot of money, I think, putting influence on local boards of election. And as I understand it, Wisconsin has actually stopped that. And kudos to Wisconsin for stopping that, because that's ridiculous. You cannot have private billionaires who own social media companies buying up public boards of elections, influencing public boards of elections. And again, as I understand it, that stopped. So I see a lot of reason to be optimistic about the election in Wisconsin. Of course, President Trump and I want there to be a free and fair election because we want every legal vote to count. That's the hallmark of America's constitutional republic, is that everybody's vote has to count. But for everybody's vote to count, everything has to be safe and secure. I feel a lot of confidence about Wisconsin, but certainly as a campaign, we're going to continue to monitor things. We're going to continue to make sure that people are doing things the right way. And I think the voters of Wisconsin should have some confidence that the Trump campaign is on top of this stuff and focused on this stuff. And we think we're going to have a great election in Wisconsin, and I think we're going to win. Sir.
WKOW Eau Claire. As you know, Kamala Harris is also speaking in Eau Claire right now with her new running mate, Tim Walz. Why did you choose to speak here in Eau Claire today, the same time as Harris?
Well, we wanted to make sure there was a contrast, in part because the media has been so dishonest about Kamala Harris's record, and in part because they refused to ask her questions. We wanted to make sure that there was at least somebody out there providing an alternative story. We have to remember, President Trump delivered a closed border and rising wages. What has Kamala Harris delivered? A promise to defund the police, a promise to ban fracking and offshore drilling, a promise to destroy the American energy sector, a promise to increase the prices of the goods that the American people rely on. She has not been a good vice president for the American people, and I don't think she deserves a promotion. I think she deserves to be fired, and that's what we're here talking to people about, because the media needs to tell the other side of the story, and unfortunately, I think unless you have somebody here, they're not going to do that. Ma'am?
We've heard a lot from Democrats using the word weird, calling you weird, calling former President Trump weird. What do you make of that weird argument?
I think that the weird argument honestly came from a bunch of 24-year-old social media interns who were bullied in school, and they decided they're going to project that onto the entire Trump campaign. And the reason it doesn't make sense is because you ask who's weird, right? I think it's pretty weird to be the border czar and to open up the border and allow fentanyl to come into your community. I think it's pretty weird to try to take children away from their parents if the parents don't want to consent to sex changes. That's something that Tim Walz did. I think it's pretty weird to want to defund the police. I think it's pretty weird to pretend that you're a tough on crime prosecutor, even though you pursued the policies that made San Francisco such a disaster when it comes to crime and public safety. So if they want to call me weird, look, I've got my wife here, I've got 3 beautiful kids at home. I'm a normal guy who wants to live the American dream and wants all of you and your kids to be able to live the American dream. That's why I'm in it. If those people want to call me weird, I think it's a badge of honor. Ma'am.
Hope with Wisconsin Public Radio. Farmers in Wisconsin and other agricultural states are increasingly relying on foreign guest workers for seasonal labor. How does your immigration policy accommodate or address that need?
Well, look, I think that the reason why we have an economy that is more and more reliant on guest workers, and frankly not just guest workers, but also a lot of illegal labor, is because the Harris administration has invited in 20 million people to be here illegally. When I talk to farmers, they don't want to hire illegal aliens. They would actually like to hire American workers and people who are lawful residents, but you cannot have a system that works for American farmers when you have 20 million people coming in here illegally. And by the way, a lot of them are competing with Wisconsin workers and Wisconsin people for jobs, driving down wages, making it harder for Wisconsinites to live the American dream. That is a scandal, and that is a disgrace. The thing I really believe about our farmers is they need access to big markets. They want to export food all over the world, and that's the way to build food security for the American people, is to allow our farmers to export all over the world. For the first time, basically in the history of this country, we are now a net importer of food. That means we no longer have the food security that America had for over 200 years. I'd like Wisconsin farmers and American farmers to get back to being the bulwark of the entire world food supply, because it means America's food supply is safe, and that's what the Kamala Harris administration has destroyed. Ma'am.
Hi, Kelly Milan, Spectrum News. Mr. Vance, recently you, after being picked for VP, you said my attitude is it doesn't really matter as much as this hits my ego, and then Trump recently said it makes no difference. Do you think it matters that Harris chose Walz, and why?
I think it matters about what it says about her, right? And I think that when President Trump selected me, what he was saying is, I want somebody who's going to fight for workers. I want somebody who's going to push back against the Chinese efforts to build the American middle class on the tops of the, he's going to push back against the Chinese effort to build the Chinese middle class on the back of the American middle class. And I want somebody who's going to push back against this crazy border policy of Kamala Harris. What does Kamala Harris's selection of Tim Walz say about her? Well, I think it says, 1, she's leaning into the defund the police radicalism of the last few years. 2, she's leaning into the open borders policies of the last few years. This is a guy, Tim Walz, who wanted to give driver's licenses to illegal aliens, facilitating the flow of illegal immigration instead of stopping it. And then the final point that I'd say is it says that she bent the knee to the Hamas caucus of the Democrat Party. Whatever your views on Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, and obviously he's not in my political party, he's criticized me, I criticized him. The amount of rage that you heard from the far left saying Kamala Harris can't pick this guy because he's Jewish is disgraceful. I want my kids to grow up in a country where they can be whatever they want to be, and people aren't attacking them for their ethnic heritage, and that's somehow...
Come on, JD. Really? That's what we're going with. We're going with Kamala didn't pick Josh Shapiro because he's Jewish. Really. Really. We can attack that in 2 different ways of why that's not even a logical train of thought. Number 1, Kamala's husband is Jewish. You know, the person that she's married to, that she sleeps next to every night, she fell in love with, is a Jewish man. He's a Jewish man. Second, Josh Shapiro has openly endorsed the Kamala Harris campaign. Do you think he would do that if she was anti-Semitic? That wouldn't make any sense. So this right here doesn't make any sense.
Considered acceptable. It's not just that they said it was acceptable. It's not just what these people said about Shapiro. It's the way that the Harris administration and the Harris campaign refused to push back against it. I think it's a real scandal.
And what do you mean they refuse to push back again? Not everything that's said needs to be addressed. Some things are so ridiculous that they don't even require a response. Like, you don't have to respond to every single... Somebody's calling their campaign anti-Semitic. They know it makes no sense that they're being called anti-Semitic and they don't say anything about it. That happens all the time. So what kind of, and like, JD Vance is not going to sit here and pretend like he all of a sudden cares about Josh Shapiro and his heritage. Like, that's not going to work either. Again, these are the little stupid things that I don't want to hear about. Like, I've heard about the border policy. I've heard about the defund the police. I've heard about all these different things, these actual policies that make me think as an independent voter. What I don't want to hear is this hoopla. And you're saying people on the left. What people on the left? Name names. Like, I'm tired of the broad paintbrush statements that politicians like to give. No, I want specifics. If you're going to say something, say it all the way. Name people. Who said this? Who said that? Not they. Oh, the far left. Who's the far left? That could constitute a whole bunch of people. Who are they?
Trump has denounced Project 2025 in its entirety. Is that something that you completely agree with, that Project 2025 and the policy proposals, with everything,
Sure.
every part of it? Do you disagree with all of it?
Well, I think what President Trump said is that Project 2025 does not represent the agenda of the Trump campaign, and it doesn't. Donald Trump represents the agenda of the Trump campaign. He's a very smart guy. He already had a lot of good public policies. He speaks for himself. And I think what's made the president so mad about the conversation around Project 2025 is anybody saying that an outside group, my understanding is it's a bunch of white papers. It's almost 1,000 pages long. No one speaks for Donald Trump. Not 1,000 pages of white papers, not a conservative nonprofit, not anybody except for the Trump campaign.
Sir, you wrote part of Project 2025. Mr. Vance, you wrote part of it. So what do you mean the Trump campaign, it doesn't speak for the Trump campaign? He picked you as vice president. You wrote part of Project 2025. Which, if you haven't seen Project 2025, it's a horrible agenda for the future of this country. How the avoidance of this question? She asks you a straight up question, a yes or no, and this is what you give. If I'm gonna say this, even if you love Trump, cool, I respect it. If you are a veteran in this country, you should be concerned about Project 2025 ever passing. If you are a veteran like myself, you should be concerned about Project 2025 and what it's going to do to your benefits in the future. You should be concerned. And I don't like how he avoided the actual question.
Yeah, Matt, Leader Telegram, based out of Eau Claire. Kind of speaking a little bit more on Project 2025. Wisconsin Democrats worry that Project 2025 will have negative impacts in rural communities like here in Eau Claire, with them stating that the Project 2025 has plans to cut federal loan programs for small farmers. How do you combat this claim?
Well, look, I combat the claim by repeating what I just said, which is that Project 2025 is not Donald Trump's agenda. Donald Trump's agenda is his agenda, and he speaks for himself. And the Trump agenda from 2017 to 2021 was awfully good for farmers in Wisconsin and everywhere else. This was a guy who fought for Wisconsin farmers to have access to global markets. This is a guy who was willing to fight back against some of the trade practices of other countries that were bad for Wisconsin farmers. This is a guy, Donald Trump, who supported an American energy policy that made it possible for farmers to get the fuel and the fertilizer they needed. His agenda was great for American farmers. And again, he speaks for himself. We're going to do the same thing when we get reelected. We're going to make American farmers wealthy and prosperous again. And we're going to do it by Donald Trump doing exactly what Donald Trump wants to do, not any organization that pretends to speak for him but doesn't.
Senator Vance,
Yeah.
2 quick questions for you. Circling back on the debate, we know
Sure.
that Kamala Harris, when she was VP, agreed to a debate early August, the 13th, with CBS. That was before Biden dropped out. Now he's out. We have a new VP pick. Can you give us any guidance on when and where that debate would happen? And then secondly, the weird thing keeps coming up. I know you said that was interns. The first time we heard it on cable news was with Walz. He took that insult all the way to the Democrat ticket, clearly convincing Democrats of these claims. What are you going to do to combat the independent voters and prevent them from saying that you're weird?
Yeah, so August 13th, what is the date today? August
7th.
7th? Okay, so here's my offer to Kamala Harris. If she'd like to do a debate with me on August 13th, I'll do it, right? We should do that, right? I don't think she wants to anymore because, one, she probably doesn't even know that she's going to be the Democratic nominee, and two, we don't know who the vice presidential nominee is going to be either. He's got a lot of skeletons that are coming out of the closet today.
Sir, what? Come on, y'all. This answer doesn't make any sense. It literally doesn't make any sense. First of all, you're saying, man, this is a lot to unpack. He's not ending very strongly. He's not ending very strongly at all. You're talking about Kamala Harris not wanting to debate you. She's not the vice presidential nominee anymore. Her job is to debate Donald Trump. And then you're talking about Tim Walz. Oh, he might not be the candidate. Sir, every indication that's come out lately about the Trump campaign is that he was looking to replace you because of how poorly you had been doing on the campaign trail. You got some nerve talking about skeletons in Tim Walz's closet. Sir, you literally called Donald Trump Hitler. Hitler. You called him the modern day Hitler, and now you're running with him. You talk about skeletons in the closet. Come on, man. Like, some people lack self-awareness. And JD, man, he started off strong. Got like 2 minutes left in this video. He's not doing very well to end this.
And we'll see if the Democrats pull a bait and switch on Tim Walz or on Kamala Harris, just like they did with Joe Biden. But look, if Kamala Harris wants to honor her commitment and debate on August 13th, let's do it. I'm all game. Now, the second thing I'll say is, look.
Again, how are you going to debate Kamala Harris? You're the VP. You're not running for president. You're running for VP. How are you going to be the one debating Kamala Harris? Come on, let's think. Let's think.
What Democrats use to attack Republicans, they're going to attack us on something. They're going to criticize us on something. I think that what makes Donald Trump and I good candidates and a good team is that we're normal guys who want to make this country great again. And we want Americans to be able to live the American dream. I really do think that whatever Tim Walz calls me, I mean, talk about weird with Tim Walz. I don't know if you guys saw the rally yesterday, but afterwards, his wife comes up to him, and Tim Walz does what any normal Midwestern guy would do, seeing his beautiful wife on stage after his speech. He gives her a firm handshake. Right? That's pretty weird. That's pretty weird. When I see my wife after a speech, I give her a hug and a kiss because I'm excited to see her, and she's my wife. These people have no leg to stand on.
Do we really want to bring wives into this? Because your wife may be the only person who hated Trump more than you did when you came out with that quote. And now, in a recent interview with Fox News, she looks super uncomfortable as she's trying to convince the American people that she has done a 180 and joined the Trump campaign, full steam ahead, full support. Like, again, guys, I'm not on one side of the fence or another. I want to continue to stress that as much as possible. I'm just calling out the BS as I see it. And this is the type of stuff that really makes me dislike politicians. It really does. And this is only about 30 seconds left. We'll just end it there. But like, that's the type of stuff that, as an independent voter, like, seeing that kind of rhetoric from both sides just makes me want to stay home and not vote for anybody, which is really unfortunate. Because, you know, at least voters who vote for Republican or Democrat, they feel really inspired to vote for their side. Us independent voters, man, we are struggling. We are struggling to determine who's the best fit for the future of our country. Because on one hand, I'm an African-American male. A lot of Donald Trump's policies, though they may help the economy, they also set us back years and years as far as race relations go, because it changes the whole climate in this country. And then on the other hand, you have a party who, like, makes you feel like racial relations are advancing in this country, yet other things that are super important suffer as well. The economy suffers, things like that. There's no one size fits all approach for an independent voter. Like, we really just don't know what to do, but this is what we are left to choose from. And as long as this is what we are left to choose from, you know I will be back with more great content. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more great content. We're going to keep following election 2024 all the way through till the end. And of course, we got more true crime videos on the way, so stay tuned for those. Until then, stay safe, stay blessed. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.